Let us jump in. So I was on Instagram the other day, and Anna, who runs Carter and Rose, which is a shop in Portland that sells their own pottery and gifts, had this great video. And she said a friend asked her what business she'd have if she didn't run Carter and Rose. And she was totally confused by this question. She said she wouldn't have a business. And her theory was creative people either love the thing they're doing or they are the thing that they are doing. So it doesn't just make sense to have a business just for the sake of being in business. So that resonated with me. We work with a lot of people like that. If you, like Anna, didn't set out to be an entrepreneur specifically, how do you succeed with what you are doing? And the photos you see here in this slide are just some of the shop owners that we work with. You'll see artists and jewelers, people who have made skincare for their family or themselves, people who've put together a planning system that really works for them and want to share it, even somebody with an apple orchard who wants to sell snacks based on that. So these are all people who are just doing something they're really into and interested in and passionate about. But now that they've made it a business, they want to do really well at that. So we're going to talk today about how we can do that. Before I dive in, just in case you're new here, here's what my team at Lydia does. We help merchants. We build Shopify websites. We do email marketing. We optimize and maintain those sites, and we work on branding and strategy for small businesses. I've been doing that for 20 years. We've worked on over 800 projects at this point, and like I said, we work primarily with creatives. Just last year, we worked closely with over 60 different businesses of all sizes, so we have a pretty good idea of what works. And now we're going to dive in. So when I was in high school, I played the cello in the orchestra. I did not play it very well, and we would sit down and we would need to tune up. And I knew my cello was not in tune. It was very obvious it was not in tune, but I also didn't know how to fix it. So I asked my seat partner to tune my cello pretty much every day, which was disheartening and not very fun. But I kind of think of this like running your business. Like maybe you feel like you know something could be better, but you're not sure what it is that you need to do next. I would love to be that person who helps you figure out what makes sense to do next. But not only showing you what it takes, I'd like to do a bit better than my struggles and enable you to not be stuck feeling that way every day and just be able to confidently figure out how you want to move forward. So what I'm about to share today is for you, whether you make 20,000 a year with your business or 20 million a year. This is just spans the whole gamut of where you could be at with your business. Okay, so goals. Why are we even here? When we start working on a new design project, we ask about goals, and the people we're working with often cite everything but sales when they answer this question. Of course, a lot of people just have a sales number they want to reach, but sometimes we hear that they want customers to care more about their brand or they want a more elevated experience, all these things like that. Those things all are what you need that do lead to more sales. So I would say ultimately pretty much every goal for e-commerce winds up being about sales because strong sales numbers allow you to hire, allow you to grow, and they let you invest in other areas of your business and other things that you care about. So, sales and money are a wonderful tool that help us do what we set out to do. So how can we make sure that's working well for us? Assuming you do want more sales on your site, here's what you might have tried already. Most business owners I talk with fall into one of three camps. They're either throwing spaghetti at the wall, which is what I call what you're doing when you're just trying a little bit of everything, and wearing yourself out from maybe trying too many things. Maybe they're copying competitors or following best practices that they've read about on the internet. Or maybe they just think their shop is good enough and they're focusing elsewhere. So I'm so curious if you feel like you've been doing one, two, or three of these things. So if you want to pop in the chat and let me know if any of this feels familiar to you, I'd be super interested to know. But this is definitely what I hear from people. So what is the problem when you try too many tactics? It can be exhausting. It's usually also pretty ineffective. you just really can't learn and be good at this many things, especially when your business is small. Maybe it's just you and you don't have a lot of financial resources or a lot of team members to help you try all these things. And without focus, no tactics really work well. If you're just putting a little bit of time into it from time to time, it's hard to really see any results. So obviously, sometimes you do need to try things, but this is not a sustainable way to grow your business. So any of you feel like you're throwing some spaghetti in the wall, feel free to gripe about that a bit in the chat. I'm so curious to hear. Um, what about the next one? So what is the problem if you copy your competitors? Especially if you're looking at very successful competitors, they must know what they're doing, right? And then best practices, there's lots, like we talk about best practices all the time in our newsletter and on our website and things like that. Best practices work in general, and they're maybe a nice place to start, but they don't specifically necessarily work for you. Copying, I like to think you're not in that business. You don't know what's going on there. You're just seeing the outside of it. That feature on the site that you want to copy, for all you know, it might be your competitor's most costly mistake this year, right? That might be the thing that they wished they hadn't done. Or maybe it is working for them, but it's just not going to work for you because you have a slightly different product, or you have a different customer base, or there's something that you don't have in place that would make that work. It's just hard to know. So sometimes it does make sense, of course, to try something that you have seen working, but it also makes sense to evaluate each tactic. And then the last one, what happens when you put your site on the back burner? This is not necessarily the worst thing to ever happen if it's going well, but it's especially frustrating when I see established brands who are getting a lot of traffic just put their site on the back burner. I have seen so many impressive brands with really old sites that are hard to use. Sometimes they come to us and they talk about wanting to redesign and get everything modernized, and then they'll sort of disappear for another year, and I'll just see that same old site sitting there before they get back to us and they're like, okay, now we're really ready to work on it. And I just think about all that money that they left on the table over the year while they were trying to decide if they wanted to work on the site or not, or maybe they were putting fires out somewhere else. But apart from leaving money on the table, it can damage your reputation to have an old site that maybe looks out of date or is not really telling your story in the way that you're doing it now with your other marketing, or maybe you're doing in store. It can also be bad if it's not working well, because then you have loyal customers who are coming back again and again to try to shop from you, but maybe having a super frustrating experience. So sometimes other needs do come first. Of course, you can only focus on so much, but if e-commerce is going to be an important sales channel, you always do need to return to the website. So really, I can kind of sum up what I see um, in these three ways. And I think we get about 50 or 60 emails a week from people who are interested in working with us to make changes to their site or improve things, or they're just kind of kicking the tires and trying to think about what they want to do. And I hear a lot of like what they're frustrated with and what they're trying to do or what they think they should do next. And I see business owners acting too big, like treating their business like a much larger business. And so they're like, oh, should I be A/B testing? Should I be doing some of these like super intense involved strategies? And before you're getting a lot of traffic, I feel that that's just a lot of wasted time and money. You're just not at the point where that's going to be significant for you. But at the same time, I see people acting too small, which, like we were talking about with putting the site on the back burner, you're leaving money on the table if you're thinking what you've got now is good enough, and your competitors are getting ahead of you. So you might not be standing out in that group of other people in your niche, and that's really could be damaging to your business. And then I say here, tactics aren't strategy. So there's lots of different things you can try. People always want to know what apps are useful, all that kind of thing. But these are just tactics, and they are not strategic for your business necessarily or what you should be doing. So for any new tactic, it's important to have data on whether we think it will work. And then if you try this tactic, it's important to have data on whether it did work. And we'll talk about that a bit more. So tactics should flow from strategy that is based on your site's traffic. And that's really the bulk of what I want to talk about today, which is how to look at how much traffic you're getting to figure out what you should be doing next. If your strategy doesn't match the size of your business or the level that you're at, you need to start making decisions specific to your business. And there are tactics and strategies that work for each level of growth. And I will explain. Um, I've put together the basic process for growing an e-commerce site. It's a little diagram that we're going to look at a few times, and I'm going to share two examples of businesses that realized it was time to make changes, so you can kind of put this in context and see what I mean. So this is my e-commerce growth cycle wheel, and we'll talk about this more. This doesn't need to make perfect sense this second, but it's also pretty straightforward. The general process for making your shop do better is to start with strategy, and this could be strategy around your product, this could be your brand strategy, a marketing or sales strategy, or anything just specific to the change that you're trying to make or thing you're trying to do next. And then next we have your message. Your message is your branding. It can be your content. It's what's on your website and how your website works and all of your marketing. And then we want customers. So this is growing traffic to your site. Once you have a strategy and you know how to talk about it, you want to get some customers to your site. And then when you are getting customers to your site, you want to optimize the site to make sure it is working for those customers. So the arrows go round and round and round. It's a flywheel that you have to go through over and over. It doesn't always go exactly like this. C and D, customers and optimization. Sometimes you flip those. Sometimes you'll work on your strategy, you'll work on the message, then you'll optimize first, and next you'll get customers. And then when you're at a certain level, you want to be driving traffic and optimizing the site at the same time, all the time. But there are definitely times when you want to focus on one or the other. So here's Love Georgie. This is a case study that's been on our website for a long time, just because I think it is a wonderful example of the kinds of changes that maybe are not an obvious tactic you're going to read in a top 10 list on the Shopify site or something like that. So I'm going to read the quote from Robin so you're not stuck trying to read while I'm talking. What I'm about to describe to you, this is the result she saw. She says, my revenue in April and May matched half of my entire annual revenue last year. This was because of my increase in ad spend, but without the better conversion rate, it wouldn't have been possible to do. So she'd been in business for a while. Her sales were stagnant. She had just kind of plateaued. And she knew something had to change, so she came to us to refresh her site. But it turns out going back to her product strategy is actually what made the big difference. So she sells charm bracelets. You can see a photo we took of some of her charms here. She is a designer and she likes to design jewelry and she likes lots of options and making all the choices and everything. So when people came to shop on her original site, they could choose the metal color and they could choose the size of the bracelet and they could choose how many charms they wanted. For every charm they wanted, they could also choose a metal. They could choose an initial or a number or an icon or a phrase. They could choose what font that it should be in. They could choose birthstones to go along with that. There were lots of choices and it was a huge form. And it reminded me of the famous jam experiment, which maybe you have read this research, but a grocery store was setting out jams to taste test all these different jam flavors. And they tried sometimes having 24 jams available to taste test and sometimes having 6 jams. And they discovered that when they had 24 jams out, lots more people came to the table to taste test jams, but not so many of them bought. When they put out just 6 choices, less people would come up to the table, but many more of them would actually buy jam. So this is a phenomenon called the paradox of choice. And when you give your customer too many choices, it often becomes overwhelming. And rather than make a decision, they put it off or they just give up making the decision at all. So I showed her an article that explained this study and we chatted about it and she totally got it. She was like, you know what? I've noticed that even when I give people all these choices, they usually choose something like either the same bracelet that I put in the example photo or something very similar. And that's because she's the expert and they come to her and they just want her to have made that decision. So she pared her product options way down. She hated the idea of not letting people do fully custom. So we put like a little note and a link. And if you wanted to be fully custom, you could get in touch with her and work with her on a very like elaborate thing with many options. But otherwise, she made it a lot simpler to make your choice and get through checkout. And as soon as she did that, her conversion rate increased so much, and the site, we hadn't even redesigned the site. It was the same old site, but she made it easier to buy her products. So that set the stage for huge growth, and she started paying to advertise on Pinterest and other social media, and her business took off. So back to that quote, in just 2 months after she did that, she made half of what she made the whole previous year just from that one change. So advertising before this change would have been costly without great results, um, but advertising after made good sense for her. So let's look at the wheel again for Robin. She'd been through this cycle a few times. She was not new in business. She already had like developed her basic strategy and message and all that. But this time around it went like this. So her strategy this time was to simplify ordering and just get more people through checkout. And her message was really just making those changes to the product page to make that possible. And then she went for customers first. As soon as that was working, she increased her ad spend. And then remember, we were still redesigning her site. So then we could move to optimization. And now she had even more customers, and we could use all that data to figure out what was working and not working on her site and improve conversion. So then at this point, once it's working, she can now bounce around between growing traffic and optimizing the site, just and keep increasing everything until it's time for a new strategy. And then we'll look at one more. This is Sister Golden. I'm going to read you Brooke's quote. She told us this year that there are limitations to the amount of physical traffic that can visit our brick and mortar store, while the potential growth for our online shop is relatively limitless. For this reason, our focus is always on the growth of our online shop. So Brooke is the daughter of a mother-daughter artist team. Her mom makes these beautiful flower collages that they photograph and sell as prints. They've been in business for 7 years. When they first came to us, I believe it's been a bit longer now, and they do have a brick and mortar store. So since they came to us, we've worked with them on 3 projects so far. The first one was a custom website, and this is always a collaborative best guess at what we think is going to work. The shop owner comes to us with what they would like, and we use what we know works really well for shops of their type to try to make a site that's going to work really well for their customers. But really, it always makes sense to kind of let the site rest with clients for a few months and then go back and look at that data and see how it's been performing and see where maybe your best guess could be tweaked or adjusted or improved. So they came back to us another time, and we did do those optimizations based on what they had been hearing from their customers and what we saw in their stats. And then just recently, last year, the project we completed is what we see in the graphics here, is they wanted to shift their focus to the art. They had been selling a bunch of gift items that were the kind of things they sell in their store, made by other artisans, but most of their online traffic was coming from social media and all the marketing they were doing, and all their marketing is about the artwork. So they wanted to change the message on their site to give the gift of flowers, and framing became very important for them because you want to just be able to give a gift that's a gift and not something where someone has to do a lot of work to make it happen. So we set up a whole bunch of different framing options on their site and did some other things to make the site work better. So let's look at where they're at in this growth cycle. On this 3rd iteration of their site, we followed this path. The strategy was to pare down to the top sellers, which was the artwork, and kind of phase out that gift shop stuff. And then the message was gifting flowers and making all of that easier. Optimization was adding in those framing options. We set up some bundles where you could bundle multiple prints to do like a gallery wall or maybe gifts for multiple people. And we added in some upsells as you go through the checkout process. Customers, now that the site's all optimized and everything's working better than ever before, all their marketing efforts are going to have a higher return on investment. So it's worth spending that time doing organic marketing and paying for advertising. So now they can sit there, they can get customer feedback, they can watch their stats, they can see how this goes and if it needs any improvement or if they have any other ideas based on how things are working. And then any high return on investment marketing channels, they can double down on those because the site is working so well. Okay, we're going to talk so briefly about tactics. And the point of what I'm talking about today is we don't want to blindly try a bunch of tactics without basing them on your own business and where you're at. But I did promise we're going to go over some tactics. So I'm going to do a high level overview. This is going to be a refresher, probably for most of you. And then I want to get into what to do at each level and how to make this unique to you. So I'm going quickly through tactics, but I'm going to send you our big detailed guide. If you haven't seen that one before, it's like a 32-page PDF about how to get more traffic to your site and make it work better. Okay, very simple math just to make sure everyone here is on the same page about traffic and optimization and why they go hand in hand. So our example is we have 10,000 visitors. Maybe that's 10,000 visitors a day or a week or a month or a year. That part doesn't really matter. But 10,000 visitors at a 1% conversion rate gives us 100 sales. Let's say you want 500 sales rather than 100. There are two ways that you could approach your goal. So on my slide, you'll see the first yellow bar there is your before. You have 10,000 visitors. You get 100 sales, which is such a small amount compared to these traffic numbers that you cannot see that bar on this graph. It's actually a little disheartening how many people you need to drag over to your site before you make any sales. But the second one here is you've decided to drive traffic. So instead of 10,000 visitors to the site, you're determined to get 50,000 visitors. And now at your 1% conversion rate, that is going to become 500 sales for you. Perhaps you do not love the idea of trying to get all those people over to your site, so you're going to keep the same amount of traffic, but you're going to try and make the site 5 times better, and you're going to build it up to a 5% conversion rate. So now you have those 10,000 visitors, but this time that is also 500 sales. And then the magic comes in, and of course this is not magic at all, but math. If you do both these things, if you drive a bunch of traffic to your site and you improve your site, your 50,000 visitors at a 5% conversion rate now become 2,500 sales, which is you have 25 times your sales rather than just 5 times them. So a strategic site is not much good without lots of traffic. And lots of traffic doesn't do you a ton of good if your site does not work well. So you're wasting your efforts on either of these things if you aren't aiming to make both of them happen. You could have the best site in the world, but if nobody sees it, it doesn't really matter. And you don't want to spend tons of money driving traffic to a site that is not performing well because it's just going to be super hard to be profitable. So you probably know all that, but just wanted to put that together so we know why we care so much about traffic and the website. And now we're just going to look at each of those 4 chunks of that growth wheel I showed you with those 4 repeating phases. We start every cycle with strategy, and here are some things you'll need at the beginning, and then even to make it work at all. And then as your business grows and it is working, you will usually need to revisit all these things over and over, either to strengthen them or to modify them. So starting with your product, this is pretty basic. What do you sell? How do you make it? Is there a need for it? When you're farther along, it might be time to improve your product or modify it, or maybe you want to add other product lines to what you do. We got your strategy, your values, I mean. This is your brand's why. So why do you do what you do? What is it that you care about? Having a solid reason to be in business at all guides all your business decisions, including how you talk about it to people. Customers, thinking about your potential customers is an important part of your strategy. You've likely created an ideal customer profile or done a target customer exercise or something like that before. Who is your customer? What do they care about? What do they want? When your business is farther along, has your customer changed? Can you reach a wider customer base now and adjust how you're speaking about your products? We love the unique selling proposition. This is what differentiates you from even your closest competitor. So if you think about that other brand, who is a close competitor or an aspirational competitor of yours. If you don't know what differentiates you from them, I promise your customers don't either, and it's going to be a lot harder to sell your products. Once you figure out who your products are for, you can figure out why they should care about it. Without having this unique differentiating factor about your business, everything is so much harder. And then if you have a truly unique and compelling USP, everything gets much, much easier. All the rest is easier to do because you have something that is easy to sell. And then your area of opportunity is a combination of all these other things. Where do you differ from your competitors and resonate with a certain customer? Where and how can you succeed? And again, this is something as your business grows over the years, the area of opportunity might change. You might have another area that you can branch out into, or maybe the landscape of your competition has changed in some way that makes you stand out even more, or maybe makes you stand out less and you need to come up with a new area of opportunity. Everything you've seen here on the strategy slide, that's something that the brand strategist, Casey, on my team does with people. So if you feel like you could use a refresh of this, or you're just starting out with something new, we'd be super happy to help you with that. And now the second part on the growth wheel is I'm calling this your message. Once you have your strategy, you need to turn that into a message. This is to your customers, your wholesalers, your partners, your press, all those people. Here's some ways to convey that message. You got your logo. Once you have your brand strategy, you can design a logo. It should be meaningful, unique, memorable, and on brand. Sometimes after a few years in business, brands redesign their logo, or even, this one surprised me, but I've been doing it for decades, rename their business. We do lots of business renaming projects because sometimes you just start out with this like fun thing that you were doing, and then you've turned it into a real business and you realize the name is not fitting anymore, or maybe there's some conflict with another business or something like that. So all things to look at and then look at again over time. I put your brand identity separately because sometimes people think a logo is all they need, but your graphic brand identity includes your like a cohesive design system that looks professional. It tells customers they're in the right place. This can include your web and print typefaces, a color scheme, illustrations, icons, patterns, everything you need to put together your website and your packaging and your social media posts, all that. Your business's voice is another part of your brand. This is a result of your brand strategy research. Your tone of voice as a business might be casual or humorous or luxurious. You will need to use that to work on the text on your site, and then just kind of your voice and vibe will affect your photos and your videos and all the content you choose to produce. And it's important to keep this all up to date. I think adjusting the content on our site and all the wording is the thing that I spend the most time doing. It's something that constantly needs to be refreshed as you're growing your brand and talking to new people. Packaging, of course, this is the experience your customer has. This is not only your product packaging, but whatever kind of unboxing experience you have for e-commerce. Also something you can revisit and improve over time. And then your website's an important part of your messaging. I'm also including email marketing here, which is an extension of your website messaging. If you have a brand new business, your website can be super basic. You can just use a theme from the Shopify theme store. There's no point really going custom yet because you don't know who your customers are and what they want and how it's all going to work. But then as you grow, you can hone your site into a super powerful sales tool, which is something we love to do. And then again, everything here on the slide is stuff that we do to help build businesses, and we would be happy to have our team of designers or copywriters help you out with any of this. Customers. This is our third or fourth part of our growth wheel, depending on what order you're doing them in. But once you know what you're doing and how to talk about it, you need to get the word out. And here's the main ways you can get traffic to a website. Organic traffic is any traffic you don't pay for. This can be your Google results or your social media posts. You can work on SEO or create content. You can post on other platforms to bring people back to your site. Paid advertising, you can pay for ads on search engines and social media sites. You can pay for ads on other websites and people's newsletters. You can sponsor events, podcasts. You want to make sure your site works pretty well before putting a lot of money into paid traffic. But once paid traffic is working, it's good to continually increase spending as you grow because you know it's working, and as long as it's profitable, The more traffic you drive, the more money you can make. PR, I've got divided into kind of online publicity and offline press. So some public relations type stuff for e-commerce brands online can include being listed in gift guides, leveraging influencers to help sell your product, sharing content on other websites, doing giveaways with other brands, all these things to get new people to know about you. And please drop questions in the Q&A for me. Kirsty is asking, I'm going to answer this one now and not save it. She wants to clarify the difference between customers and message. Customers really is traffic. They could just say traffic at the top of this slide, but we're thinking of it in this kind of people-centric way. So this is just like, how do you get more traffic to your site so you can make more sales? And these are the ways you can get more traffic. I have offline press on here. This doesn't drive people to your site as much because there's not a link directly to you, but this is getting in magazines and newspapers, maybe having a spot on local TV or doing a podcast interview, speaking in front of an audience. It's great to have some familiar media logos to put on your website to increase trust. Like if somebody has come from Google and they're on your site and they see that you have been featured in some big media magazines or TV or anything like that, then they're like, oh, this is a real legit brand that I can trust ordering from. So that's one nice benefit of that. And then we have word of mouth. When you have a remarkable brand, people will talk about it. This can happen organically with your customers. And you can also do things to encourage this, like setting up a loyalty program or an affiliate system or something like that. Also, don't forget your return customers. So the people that have already bought from you are easier to get back than brand new people. So you want to think about your mailing list. And if you're doing ads, you can do retargeting to bring people back. And then I'm inserting like a kind of parentheses here. This is just a couple slides to illustrate where a healthy business gets traffic from. These are examples of how some of our most successful clients' traffic sources are divided up. So you'll see the business on the left, they get most of their traffic through email. So they're bringing back customers that they've already found. And then they get organic search traffic. That's people who just search in Google and find them without them paying for that. Direct is kind of a bucket where your stats will put things where somebody has just bookmarked your site or typed it in directly, and there's some other reasons that traffic can fall in there. They also get a good amount of social media traffic, 12%, and referral, so that means there's links on other websites that goes to them. And then the business on the right, you can see they're divided up pretty evenly. They're getting a lot of traffic from SMS, and this is a brand that sells classes on their website. So they'll text people when the new class schedule is out and people will sign up for those classes. And then they're divided up pretty nicely into paid social media, organic search, email, and then people just finding them on social media or dropping by. And I think that this shows that you shouldn't have all your traffic eggs in one basket, because if all your traffic comes from Instagram and then your account gets shut down for whatever reason, that's really hard to recover from. But if that's one slice of your pie, you can cover for that with something else. So here's two more just for fun. The business on the left, over half their traffic comes from their SEO. So that's just Google pointing people to them. And then another big chunk is email. So they're getting those people that have visited back. And they've got like little slices of other things in here. And then the business on the right, they do a lot with paid Google traffic and then organic Google traffic. And then again, you'll see email is another big one. So we're not really talking about email here, but I want to always be talking about email because that's a really important strategy for e-commerce businesses. Let's say your conversion rate is 2% on your site, 2% of people will make a purchase. That means 98% of people will leave without making a purchase. And if you can get those people on your mailing list, you have the opportunity to keep telling them about what you do and potentially make a sale. So email is super important. Okay, back to the growth phases, and then we're going to move into the whole thing I'm trying to talk about with what your traffic is going to tell you. So optimizing is the other thing you'll want to do in those 4 growth phases. Although optimizing might eventually be something they're doing at all times. But just for simplicity's sake, it's one of our chunks. Once you have enough customers to optimize for, you can take steps in these categories to get the best return for your marketing efforts. Create strategic content. This is your website text, your blog posts, your photos, your videos, your email automations, your social media posts. This should always be evolving. Evaluating your traffic sources is important. So we call it targeted traffic when you're sending the right kind of customers to your site. For example, if you have a yarn shop, you would much rather have knitters coming to your site than motorcycle enthusiasts. If you're paying for traffic, you want it to be very targeted. Free traffic, for instance, from Google, it's okay if that has a lower conversion rate because you're not necessarily putting any time or money into it. So just look at where your traffic is coming from and how it's converting and how can you improve on what's working and maybe quit spending so much time on things that aren't working for you. For instance, some brands, maybe you get tons of traffic from Pinterest, but those are all people who want to DIY something and they don't want to buy from you. So you might be getting tons and tons of traffic from there, but almost nobody makes a sale. If you're advertising there, that might be a place you want to stop advertising because it's not really worth your money. Simplifying the purchase path. So like our charm bracelets example, you might be making it too hard for your customers to purchase. You can ask yourself if your navigation's straightforward, how many clicks is it taking to get to checkout? Is your message compelling? Is it confusing? What's going on there? You can enhance the user experience on your website. This can be about, is the site loading quickly? Is it accessible? What features or functionality would help your customers? How can you increase your conversion rate? How can you increase your average order value? Maybe you do have customers, but they're not returning as much as you would like. How do you get them to come back? And then I have experiments here. Especially when you get a lot of traffic, experimenting and testing is important. A/B tests let you see if each change you want to make is helping or hurting your sales. And then just for this whole optimized section, we do have a full-time e-commerce strategist on staff. That's Helen on my team. In case you want help with anything in the optimized section, this is what we're always thinking about all the time. Okay, what got you here won't get you there. This is a corny old saying, which is totally true. If your strategy doesn't match the size of your business or the level you're at, you want to make decisions that are specific to your business. So we have just run through some tactics, but which are going to make sense for your business. I have found that what works to get an e-commerce business to 6 figures is different than what you need to get from 6 to 7 figures, and then different again if you want to get from 7 to 8 million, 8 million. Well, that'd be exciting. 8 figures. So trying to make 100,000 a year is going to feel different than what you need to do to try to make 1 million a year, and that's going to feel different again trying to get yourself to 10 million. And we work with people like all along that spectrum. So that's the next part of what we're going to talk about, the size of your business and how to use that to decide what to do. So we've been talking about micro businesses at work lately. The Small Business Association says that a micro business is up to 10 employees and a small business is up to 500 employees. I do not know about you, but if I had 500 employees, I would no longer feel small, but I would still qualify as small thanks to the SBA. So pretty much every business that I work with is a small business, and many of them are also micro businesses. But I'm going to divide this group of small businesses up into 3 based on mostly your website traffic. So for today's purposes, we're just going to talk about being in 3 different places in business. Either you're getting low traffic, medium traffic, or high traffic. There's nothing, at first I was thinking, oh, I'd call them start and then grow and established, but there's really nothing wrong with staying at one of these levels purposefully. So Aelity is in the middle and I'm perfectly happy that way. Some people have low traffic, like I put somebody, a ceramicist here. Maybe you are just making all the ceramics you want to make every month and then selling out of them all instantly at the end of the month. You don't need to keep driving tons more traffic because what you're doing is working for you. So for our purposes, we're going to be thinking about e-commerce only, though it's not often the only channel that a business is working in. So maybe you have strong wholesale sales, or maybe you have brick and mortar locations. E-commerce might not be the only thing that you do. So deciding what level to base your strategy on is mostly about traffic, but it's not only traffic. And then of course there's different benchmarks depending on your industry and your products. But I have put together some indicators of how to tell which level you're at when we're talking about tactics and strategy. There's not really a black and white benchmark for every e-commerce business, but let's go through these indicators. The low traffic business, and that's not an insult, it's just a description. You probably have less than 5,000 visitors to your website monthly, and you're probably making less than 50,000 a month from your website. Maybe you've been in business for less than a couple of years and you're a team of one or two. A medium traffic business is getting more than 5,000 visitors and maybe up to around 100,000 visitors every month. Maybe you're making $50,000 to $200,000 monthly. You could have been in business for 2 to 5 years, maybe, and maybe you have a smaller team of 3 to 5, but this might be totally different. I see one person businesses getting this much traffic and make this much money. It really just depends on what you sell. And then the high traffic business, um, I'm looking at more than 100,000 visitors a month. That's a big amount of traffic that's going to change how you work on your website. You're maybe making over $200,000 every month. You've been in business probably for 5 years or more, and you might have 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 team members. This is a bigger business. One thing to know is you can invest in e-commerce if another part of your business is well established. So normally I would say if you have very low traffic, it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money making your website really amazing. But if you've been in business for quite a while and you have a customer base and your wholesale is going really strong, or your brick and mortar shops are going really strong, you can take that success to invest in your e-commerce and get a head start there and not have to like suffer through this like you're a brand new business. So this is, again, all just sort of guidelines and ideas and not completely black and white. It's going to be different for every type of business. And another thing, to pull these numbers together, I was looking at a comparison of all the shops we've worked with in the last few years, how much traffic they get, how much money they make. If you sell stickers and maybe each sticker is $4 or $5 and you get 100,000 visitors a month, you are going to have a very different amount of money that you make than if you have a jewelry brand and your jewelry falls in the $1,000 per piece range, right? Your average order value is going to be really different and the numbers you see are going to be different. So again, these are just rough guidelines. But let's talk about what to do at each level. So let's say you fall in that low traffic group. What you're trying to do right now is find out what works. So your strategy is, maybe you're a new business or you're still honing what you're doing for your business. You're thinking about your product strategy and making sure your product's really strong and making sure your brand makes sense. Your message is going to be making sure your branding is good. And I put MVP website here. That's a minimum viable product is what we call it. You don't have to have the best website in the world. You don't have to have somebody build it for you. You can just find one from the Shopify theme store and get your photos and products on it and put your logo there. Customers, mostly it's going to be organic traffic at this stage, because it usually is not going to make sense to pay for ads, because you're not at the point where your conversion rate is going to be high enough to make those pay off and be profitable. But that certainly doesn't mean you can't experiment. It's probably just not going to be a huge part of your strategy. And then optimization, the less traffic you get, the less useful stats are, because it's just kind of random where people are coming from. If you get 10 visitors to your website in a day, the stats are going to mean a lot less than if you get 10,000 visitors in a day. And the same thing with, somebody mentioned A/B testing as we hopped into the chat. There's a level of traffic, and I wish I had Helen here, my e-commerce strategist. There's a level of traffic where it just doesn't make sense to do A/B testing. You don't have enough traffic for it to be statistically significant. And then there's a point where you're getting so much traffic that it's really risky not to A/B test everything you're doing. And we're going to talk about that. So anyway, for a low traffic site, you're experimenting to find out what works. You actually can do a lot of the stuff I said not to do at the start. You can throw spaghetti at the wall. You can use best practices. You can ethically copy your competitors. Your website will have to go on the back burner from time to time as you're building other channels. But too often, I see people at this stage tweaking their website instead of driving traffic. And I actually just got an email from a stationery designer who wanted to know how to improve her site. And she told me some days I feel like I'd rather work on my website instead of on my actual business. So, working on the website can feel less scary for some people and less hard than getting out there and really selling and marketing your business and your product. And you might find yourself stalling or getting stuck because you're doing the thing that feels easier rather than the thing you need, which is getting more traffic. Medium traffic. This is when you can correct what you've already been doing using data and feedback. Your strategy is going to be now to review your stats because you have stats that make sense. You could start doing something here like heat mapping and using that data to see how people are using their site and where they're getting stuck and things like that. Message. Sometimes this is a time when you need to rebrand or change how you're talking about your product because you've now built that customer base that was at first just kind of an idea or a prediction, but now they're real people and you know how they're using your site. And you can optimize at this point. You can improve the site using A and B here, that strategy that you came up with and the message that you're refining. You can take all that to your website and to your marketing. And then as far as customers and growing traffic, this is when it really can make sense to add paid traffic to the mix and really focus on customer retention, bringing people back through email and things like that. So at this point, you can base decisions on customer feedback and stats. Usually there are things to correct from the first stage. You can stop throwing spaghetti at the wall here. For my business, I'm really focusing this year on the 80-20 rule, which is what is the 20% of stuff that is leading to 80% of the results. And rather than just lashing out with all kinds of tactics and ideas, I just looked at what worked for us last year. I'm going to do more of that. So this is a nice place in business to keep doing what you know works. At this point, best practices have their place, but they can get you in trouble, again, because they're not specific to you. And then sometimes you're just kind of beyond knowing what the best practice is, and you really can make choices based on your business. This is not a great time to put your site on the back burner because you really need to keep the momentum here and keep that traffic coming and keep customers interested and just keep the whole cycle going. What if you are getting high traffic? Once you're getting a lot of traffic, details count. So, strategy. You can review your stats again. Your stats are even better now. You can do user experience audits on your website. You can do customer interviews. This is something we love doing with a bigger business. This is where you actually physically talk with your customers and ask them pointed questions that are going to help you make decisions, or you hire somebody to do this. This is a service that we offer. Your message, you're going to continue to hone what's working here. Usually you're pretty established at this point and you're not guessing and changing and refining. You're just going to know what really works to sell your products. Optimizing at this point, this is when we can get into A/B testing. All the details really count. So at this scale, making changes to your site without A/B testing them is extremely risky. For instance, what we would normally do with a brand that is in the medium traffic, you want to do that differently when you're getting high traffic. So we do have a brand we're working with right now that's on that cusp in between the medium and the high traffic place, and we've started A/B testing with them, something new with them. They came up with a change they wanted to make to their site that based on their customers they thought would be a good idea. We also thought this was a fantastic idea, and we built it into their site. Before A/B testing, we would have just built it into their site and gone on with their lives and not really known what had happened. But this time we A/B tested it, which means that half of their customers saw this part of the site how it was before, and the other half of their customers saw the new change. And it really dropped their stats down. Their conversion rate suffered. We had an idea that we thought would be good, and everybody was in agreement, but then the stats don't lie. It didn't work for their customers for some reason. So having this information, we could take that back off the site and go back to how they had it. So for a shop that gets hundreds of thousands of visitors per month, when you do the math, a small tweak, like something that could make a 0.1% change to your conversion rate, that can mean $500,000 in sales lost or gained that year. It's a really big deal. And I don't see a lot of brands that get high traffic, not the ones we work with, the more artistic creative brands. I don't see them looking at it that way in the same way like maybe a tech startup would look at it, but it's something that's really important to do. It's important to make informed decisions once your e-commerce is working well. So for traffic, you're continually increasing your ad spend here and you're always working on your SEO. And usually this optimization and the traffic building is going hand in hand and happening at the same time. Just to hammer my point home, when should you focus on traffic or conversion? I've got the graph here. If you're getting less than 5,000 visits per month, and you can go into your Shopify stats and see how many visitors you get each month, you really don't need to worry too much about making your site perfect. You can have that minimum viable product site and you can grow your organic traffic till you get to a level where it makes sense to invest in other things. If you're getting around 50,000 or somewhere up to 100,000 visits per month, this is when it does make sense to optimize your site. There's changes that you can make that can really increase your sales. And this is where you can start growing your traffic purposefully instead of just like waiting for people to come to you. And then once you have gotten to this high traffic level of over 100,000 visits every month, this is when you want to increase your ad spend and always be testing changes. Once the site's working, you'll get a good return from the traffic you drive, so there's a point which you can focus on both, like I mentioned. Our most successful clients get hundreds of thousands of visitors per month. E-commerce has huge potential. This is some place that your business can get to if you've got all your foundations right, and then you're just taking these steps in the right order at the right time. So what to do next? I have 4 kind of scenarios for where you might be with your business, and I'm going to talk about what you might want to do next. If you have low traffic, you're going to want to increase your marketing efforts or go back to the fundamentals of your strategy. And it looks like we are going to be running out of time here, so I'm not going to have time for Q&A, but I want you to put your questions in the Q&A and I will respond to them in an email. So low traffic's usually due to a lack of understanding what to do, a lack of resources, or you just aren't putting the effort in. If you put a real effort in here and you aren't seeing results, not every product sells. Our ads partner told me recently if he can't get ads to convert, there's usually a problem with your product or your messaging. So it might be time to go back to brand strategy and just your message if you just cannot drive the traffic and you know you're doing this the way that it should be done. Low sales. So you're getting decent traffic, but low sales. That points to a website that needs to be fixed. You can work to raise your conversion rate, average order value, and keep customers engaged and returning. If your traffic's high, a website optimization and email marketing project will pay for itself because the changes you make, you know they're going to have a return because you're getting the traffic. Maybe your sales feel stagnant. If your sales have plateaued, it's time to go back through those growth phases to revisit your strategy before making a new marketing push. It's likely that something about your business or customer or competitors has changed. And this is often when my team is called in to refresh the brand and website and approach a business with a new perspective. What if you're getting average to strong sales? This is when you definitely don't want to put your site on the back burner. It can be tempting to tell yourself your website's working fine and move on to other sales channels, but any work you do at this stage will pay off, so it's worth investing. We support businesses at this level who are continually launching campaigns by testing them and optimizing and making sure everything works and those numbers are going up. So a quick recap. Our goals are to grow sales. We want to create connection with customers, create a professional site, and expand your reach to have a website that's a reliable sales channel. Tactics. We talked about throwing spaghetti at the wall, copying your competitors, putting your site on the back burner. These things are inefficient. Unfortunately, it's all too easy to throw yourself into tactics without a strategy or to ignore your site because it feels like a big stressful project. And then the strategy that I'm hoping you'll take away from this is that you just want to cycle through those phases of growth. You want to do strategy, messaging, drive traffic, optimize to keep growing sensibly for the level that you're at. So my takeaway is that cycling through these growth phases is how we keep our e-commerce channel healthy. A website is never done. It can always perform better. So back to this idea again, based on what we talked about, what level are you at? Low traffic, you're going to want to grow your traffic. Medium traffic, traffic and optimization are both important. And high traffic is all about campaigns, tests, and analysis. I'm happy to say my team can help you with all of this or at least point you in the right direction. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. Let's pull the levers to make a profitable online shop. Growing your e-commerce is simple. Simple doesn't mean it's easy, but it's pretty straightforward. There's things that work. As long as you know which levers to pull and when, e-commerce can really work for you. So I'm going to send an email with some ideas for next steps. Keep an eye out for that email. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with me, here's where you can find me. You have like a minute here if you want to drop a question in the Q&A. If you want to pop in the chat and tell me if this was helpful or where you were confused, that would be great for me as well. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm always here to help. I've got those resources coming to you, and I am happy to answer questions over email. I always have time for that, so don't feel like you don't want to crowd my inbox or anything. I want to hear from you. So thanks for sharing some time with me today, and I will follow up soon. I appreciate you. Oh, here's my real face instead of my photo. I'm seeing some questions and things in the chat. I'm going to make sure I have, that's going to save that for me. And I will either get back to you personally over email, or if I feel that your question could help everybody, I'm going to put the answer to that question in my follow-up email. Somebody's asking if there will be a replay. Yes, I will include that information either in my follow-up email, or if it takes us a second to get it up, I might send a second email about the replay. So there will be a video of this. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.